So today's video is about the divisibility rules. So what is divisibility? It's the ability of one number to be evenly divided by another number. For example, 9 is divisible by 3 because 3 can go into 9 with no remainder. What are the divisibility rules? It's a set of rules that allow someone to figure out if a number is divisible by another number without having to actually divide the number. So it's really kind of like a shortcut. So let's look at some of the divisibility rules. So this is the divisibility rule for the number 2. All even numbers can be divided by 2. Therefore, any number ending in 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8 can be divided by 2. So let's look at our first example. Tell if the following numbers are divisible by 2. So here's our first number, 352. So the first thing we want to look at is this an even number? Well, if it ends in 2, it is an even number, so the answer would be yes, this is divisible because it ends in the number 2 and it's an even number. Our next number is 281. When we look at this number, it ends in the number 1, which means it's an odd number, so the answer would be no. This is not divisible by 2 because it's an odd number. Our next number is 780, and we would say again, yes, that this is divisible because it ends in the number 0, meaning it's an even number. And our last number is 28,233. Again, when we look at this number, it ends in 3, which means it's an odd number. So our answer would be no, it's not divisible by 2 because it's an odd number. So all even numbers can be divided evenly by 2. So here's the divisibility rule for the number 3. First, you're going to find the sum of the digits in the number. If the sum is divisible by 3, then the number is divisible by 3. So let's look at some examples. So here's example 2. Find if the following numbers are divisible by 3. So here's our first number, 348. Well, to find if it's divisible by 2, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the numbers together. So we're going to add 3, 4, and 8. So when we add 3 plus 4 plus 8, it gives us 15. So then we want to ask ourselves, well, is 15 divisible by 3? And 15 is divisible by 3. So because 15 is divisible by 3, then 348 is divisible by 3. Our next number is 25. Again, we want to know, is this divisible by 3? So to find out, first, we're going to add the two digits together, and 2 plus 5 gives us 7. So then again, we have to ask ourselves, well, is the number 7 divisible by 3? And the answer is no. So since 7 is not divisible by 3, then 25 is not divisible by 3. So now let's look at the divisibility rule for the number 5. Any number that ends in 5 or 0 is divisible by 5. So example 3, we want to find that the following numbers are divisible by 5. So here's our first number, 230. Well, because it ends in 0, the answer would be yes, this number is divisible by 5. Our next number is 98. It doesn't end in 5 or 0, so the answer would be no. This number does not end in 5 or 0, so it is not divisible by 5. That means 5 can't go into it evenly without a remainder. And then we have 645. It ends in the number 5, so that means yes, this number is divisible by 5. 5 can go into 645 evenly without a remainder. Next is the divisibility rule for the number 6. If a number is divisible by 2 and 3, it is also divisible by 6. So let's look at some examples. We want to know if the following numbers are divisible by 6. So here's our first number, 315. So we have to test it twice. We have to first test to see if it's divisible by 2, and then we have to test to see if it's divisible by 3. So we'll start with, is this number divisible by 2? Well, if we look at 315, it doesn't end in an even number, so that means it is not divisible by 2. And then we want to check, is it divisible by 3? So when we add 3 plus 1 plus 5, well, 3 plus 1 gives us 4, and 4 plus 5 gives us 9, which means 315 is divisible by 3. However, Since 315 is not divisible by 2 and 3, it's not divisible by 6. It has to be divisible by both. So although it was divisible by 3, it was not divisible by 2, which means 315 is not divisible by 6. Our next example is 78. Again, we have to test both numbers, 2 and 3. Well, it ends in an even number, so that means, yes, 78 is divisible by 2. So now we want to check, is it divisible by 3? Well, if I add 7 plus 8, that gives me 15, and 15 is divisible by 3, which means 78 is divisible by 3. Therefore, since 78 is divisible by 2 and 3, that means it is also divisible by 6. So remember, for 6, it has to be divisible by both 2 and 3. So here's a divisibility rule for the number 9. Again, you're going to do the number 9 just like you did the number 3. You're going to find the sum of the digits of the number, and if the sum is divisible by 9, then the number is also divisible by 9. So we're going to look at 1,341. Again, we want to know, is it divisible by 9? So the first thing we'll do is we'll add all the digits together. So we'll add 1 plus 3 plus 4 plus 1. When we add them together, that gives us 9. So then the question is, well, is 9 divisible by 9? And the answer is yes. So because 9 can be divided by 9, then 1,341 can be divided by 9. Then we have 986. Again, we're going to add those digits together. 9 plus 8 plus 6, and that gives us 23. And then we have to ask, is 23 divisible by 9? Can 9 go into 23 evenly with no remainder? The answer is no. So since 23 cannot be divided by 9, then 986 cannot be divided by 9. And the last divisibility rule is for the number 10. If a number ends in 0, it is divisible by 10. So we want to find if the following numbers are divisible by 10. So our first number is 2004. So again, we want to see, does it end in 0? And because this one doesn't end in 0, we would say it is not divisible by 10 because it doesn't end in 0. Then we have 3,690. Again, we look to see, does it end in 0? It does end in 0, so that means yes, 3,690 is divisible because it does end in 0. And then we have the number 80. Again, we want to see, does it end in 0? And the answer is yes, so that means, again, yes, this number is divisible by 10 because it does end in 0. So those are the divisibility rules. You really want to memorize them because what it does is it really helps you automatically kind of find when numbers are divisible by another number, and it will help you when it's time for us to simplify fractions, when you're trying to do factors of a number, when you're trying to do greatest common factor. So it's a great tool to have. So you do want to spend some time learning all of the divisibility rules. So now make sure that you spend some time writing to our tiger. So teach the tiger something that you learned in today's video.